Good afternoon, debaters. Welcome to our lecture on what is justice. This is the most common value used in speech and debate, and I want you to think about it because you shouldn't just default to it. It's not always the right one, but it's the one we as judges hear the most. Why is justice the most important value in a debate? Because it's used the most, because it's the job of the government, because it's the crux of the social contracts between people. Let's talk about all of these in this short little video right now. What is justice? According to Socrates and Aristotle and Plato, and frankly, Aristotle was writing about Plato and Socrates when this quote came up, to each man his due. What exactly does this mean? What do humans do? Are they like library books and they have to be returned in time? Are they homework assignments? What exactly does this mean? In conflict, who gets what? What does a person do? Whose rights win? What are the consequences to actions? Is there revenge versus a rule of law? And how do we protect society? How do we assure peace in society? These are all part of the functions of what justice is. How do we determine what is due to each man? According to Thomas Hobbes, the issue of justice is pretty simple. In the state of nature, there is no right, there is no wrong, there is no do anything. Everybody has their own stuff, and anybody else is entitled to it if they can take it away. There is no social contract. Therefore, there's nothing that is unjust or just because justice is determined by this contract. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, on the flip side, says genuine morality consists in the application of reason to human affairs and conduct. And that is how we look at justice. What is rational? What is reasonable in how we achieve equity between people? So let's talk. What exactly is justice? What are humans do? What is each person properly entitled to have as a human being? Those are called rights. They have the right to life, liberty, property. Now, how we manage those things is where we get into trouble working with one another in a society. We have to make agreements as to how we're going to share that life, how we're going to share the liberty, and how we're going to share the property. And what happens when our rights or our liberties conflict with one another? If there's a conflict, who gets what? Whose rights win? Well, this is an important issue because sometimes equitability isn't always the right answer. If you have so much food and you have an adult and you have an infant, do you give the infant equal amount of the food? Well, if you do, then that goes to waste and the adult who might need it doesn't get it. So when there's a conflict of needs or a conflict of rights, how do you decide that? That's what society is supposed to do. And that's why protection of society is so important. How do we assure peace in society? Because if we don't have peace, then our life and our liberty is at risk. That's dangerous because then we start seeing things falling apart. And then there are consequences to actions. Now, this is what we call the justice system in the United States. This is when there is a law and it is broken, and there are consequences to it. So justice and injustice are the tasks of the government to manage so that we don't have people who are going out and getting revenge randomly on other people. What I think is revengeful and adequate in revenge may not be what somebody else does. Now, the eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is the oldest law that I think I can think of. And if you hurt me, I get to hurt you in the same proportion. Or I can decide to get more revenge so you won't do that again. So if you stick me with a stick, I'm not only going to stick you with one stick, I'm going to stick you with 5 sticks. And then way you won't do it. A rule of law says that there is one standard for everybody. and we're all going to abide by it. That means that there is no concept of revenge anymore, or it doesn't apply here. What instead we have is the government assuming the rule of punisher to create equitable response, consequence to an action. When we talk about what each man is due in justice, that becomes very problematic because it is very subjective. That's why we have a rule of law that lays out the consequences specifically. So therefore, justice comes with a contract comes from a contract with others. We have to agree on this. Now, you may not have agreed to it, but you live in this society, therefore you are expected to abide by it. It is based on the law that governs all the members of the contract. So all the people in society must be obedient to this law or conform to it or agree to abide by it. Depends on the law, how what that choice is. But everybody in the contract must agree to it. It is a method to balance rights. My right to something versus your right to something. I have a habit of walking through a field, and I've been doing it for many, many years. Well, now somebody else is going to build on that. They're taking away my right to walk through that. Now, that doesn't sound like a very big thing, but actually, property laws are based on habit and what people have done versus what the owner wants to do with the property. And the law recognizes that both sides have rights. And ultimately, justice is a resolution of wrongs done one against another. That is what it means to have each his due. They get the resolution that should resolve the animosity and the problem that each member of society has when one does something against the other. How does justice apply in your case, and how do you prove it? That's your LD value. Now, how do you prove it? That's your LD value criterion, and we'll continue that in another video.